Welcome back to class time. I'm Alethea Brown, and this is CSEC English Literature. Today, we'll be looking at the plot structure for the play, The Tempest. The Tempest can be bought at your local bookstore, or there's also an e-copy available online, so you can download it for free. We begin our lesson. Mercy upon us! We think, we sink, we sink. Goodbye, my wife and family. Goodbye, my brother. We sink, we sink. Does that ring a bell? Does it look like any of the scenes from the play? Of course it does. And we are going to be taking a closer examination today of The Tempest. In terms of our objectives, by the end of this lesson, you should be, one, be able to assess the type of play The Tempest is in relation to the plot development. I hope that we'll also be able to discuss the structure and the development of the plot of The Tempest. And I hope you will develop a more positive attitude towards and an appreciation of Shakespearean drama. I know sometimes people shy away from Shakespearean drama because the language is so different and you can't understand what the characters are saying. But hopefully after today, that mindset will change. How do we begin? Now, have you ever thought about what it is that a tempest really represents? What is a tempest? Yes, you're on the right track right there. So the tempest is a violent storm. And this storm is normally very windy, and it sometimes comes with hail, sometimes with snow. All right? A tempest can also be defined as a violent commotion that causes disturbance or tumult. How is this title applicable to the play, especially when the storm only occurred for a few minutes and then died down, never to come back in the story again? Why would Shakespeare have named the play The Tempest? Maybe if we evaluate the title of the play, we can get a better understanding of the events that unfold in the drama piece. So we see where the title could be applicable in the sense that Prospero created a storm through magic. All right, so that's one way of looking at it. The storm lasts for a few minutes and tapers off by the end of Act 1, never to gain intensity again. But what is important is that the actions of the plot are all triggered by the storm. And we are going to be delving into that a little bit later. But remember that the storm was the instigator for everything else that happened in this play. Prospero strategically created the storm because he had a mission to accomplish. And then we could look at the fact that the storm caused much disturbance, not only in the natural realm, but also for the characters. We realize that several things went haywire after the storm. So this could be one way of looking at how the title of the play is applicable. Now remember that we are looking at the plot structure of the play. How does Shakespeare organize it? And I'm thinking that if you have an idea of the plot structure, then you'll know what to look out for in each scene. So let us go into that discussion now. In order to identify with the play, or in order to sometimes to follow the development of the play, it is good to know what type of play it is. The type of play is going to inform the progression of the events. It's going to inform the type of activities that we are expecting to find in the drama. So, is The Tempest tragedy? Is it a comedy? Is it romance? We are going to look at what each of these entails to make a decision as to which of the categories the play falls under. All right. When we think of the Shakespearean comedy, as the word suggests, we are thinking a light-hearted kind of expression. We are thinking ha-ha moments. We are thinking jokes. But in addition to that, the Shakespearean comedy also entails the progression of details or the order of events from humorous misunderstanding or confusion and then back to order again. Can we see that being portrayed in The Tempest? A situation where there was order, then there was disorder, and then there was order again. Let us look at it. Before the characters came to the shore where the storm was, we are thinking that there was some semblance of order. And especially if we're going to go way back to when they were in Milan or in Naples, there was some semblance of order. We realized that disorder crept in during and after the storm. Humorous misunderstanding or confusion. At one point in the story, after the characters, the ship split and the characters were thrust on the island, there was much confusion. One of the confusing and humorous situations I found was when Trincolo stumbled upon Stefano being under Caliban's robe or his cloak. And here comes this drunkard saying that he has found a monster who had 4 hands, 4 feet, and 2 mouths, not realizing that it was his friend Stefano who was under the blanket with Caliban. All right, so confusion and misunderstanding right there. And then towards the end of the play, we see the order being restored again. So that point is well taken there. The comedy also has a lot of mistaken identities, as I hinted before, and insults. And one of my favorite insults is where Sebastian was speaking to the boatswain and he said, "Oh, pox out your mouth, you barking, blasphemous, uncharitable dog." It doesn't get more insulting than that, right? So there are insults, coarse or exaggerated characters. We can look at the character of Caliban. I don't know, but for some reason, Caliban is my friend. And one of the parts that I found him to be most coarse, or his character being most exaggerated, is when Prospero said to him, basically, "I don't like you because after I was here on the island, you tried to rape my daughter." Caliban said, he didn't deny it. He said, "Yes, and if you didn't stop me, I would have populated the island with some little Calibans." Right? So that's a coarse character right there. We also see a further element of the comedy coming out in terms of the marriage at the end of the drama piece. And we see where Ferdinand and Miranda are indeed preparing to get married. So we see where elements of the comedy fit into the whole setup of the Tempest. What about the tragedy now? Does the Tempest reflect any aspect of the Shakespearean tragedy? Let's look at it. The tragedy often celebrates the courage and dignity of its hero in the face of inevitable doom. Now, I'm not sure if we can say that Prospero suffered doom, so to speak. That's a very strong word. We know he did have a downfall, all right? So maybe not the doom part so much. Another feature, though, is that the hero is typically neither completely good nor completely evil, but somewhere between the extremes. Can we say that is applicable to Prospero? Yes. Let us look at the character of Prospero. Prospero is defending a cause, and to an extent, we can understand why he feels the way he feels about his brother, who has usurped him, driven him to this island, basically left him to die on the sea. Luckily, he and Miranda were spared, so they didn't die. We see Prospero now exacting revenge on his brother for having usurped him. But is revenge ever a good thing? Regardless of whatever the revenge, whatever triggers it, is it ever a good thing? So, Prospero, maybe he's not completely good, nor completely evil, but then again, doesn't Prospero reflect true human nature? Which of us is really absolutely good? Which of us is truly absolutely evil? All right, so we see that part being shown through the character of Prospero. The hero's fall may be brought about by some flaw in his or her character, and this flaw is normally known as the tragic flaw. Did Prospero, if we are considering him to be the heroic figure, does he have a flaw? Yes, Prospero had 2 flaws. The first one was that he was very trusting. So we see where he left his dukedom to his brother. His brother was supposed to run the country while he went off to study magic and so on. The other flaw was that he gave up his responsibilities as duke to go practice his magic and learn literature and philosophy and so on. Those are character flaws. And for those 2 flaws, he paid dearly, being banished from his country and losing his dukedom. So, is the tragedy aspect of the drama replicated in The Tempest? Yes. So far we have seen elements of a comedy. We have seen elements of a tragedy. And some critics have combined the two to say that The Tempest falls under the category of a tragic comedy, you know, where you have elements of tragedy and comedy being interrelated and interspersed throughout the play. But then now there is the aspect of the romantic side of things. And when it comes on to romance drama, we are looking at a drama production, especially the Shakespearean drama, which employs fantastic elements such as fairies and magical spells. Do we see these in The Tempest? Of course. Think about the feast that, or the celebration that Prospero had for Miranda when she was betrothed to Ferdinand. We saw all those fairies and so on coming out and making magic and, you know, dancing and so on. So there was a magical element. We also see the magical spell being put on some of the characters. For example, when we think of the plot to kill Alonso, right? There was a spell, a sleeping spell that came over the characters, and that sleeping spell later on worked to Alonso's advantage. But we'll get there. There's a combination of tragic themes, and towards the end of the plot, there is reunion, reconciliation, and regeneration. And we definitely see this coming out towards the end of The Tempest, where Prospero forgives everybody. He tells them that, yes, you wronged me, you shouldn't have wronged me, but I forgive you. Now that you have given me my nice dukedom back, you're all forgiven and we can go home in peace. All right? And then now, another element of the romance is that it includes music and song. And right throughout the play, we see these being executed. Even Stefano and Trinculo, I tend to call them the idiots. We see them singing a lot. We saw songs from the fairies. Ariel did some amount of singing as well. Changing of old garments for fresh ones. The case of Trinculo and Stefano, when they came to close to where they were supposed to kill Prospero, right? We saw them putting on Prospero's clothes and dressing up as if they were royalty already. There are usually striking scenes, such as the reunion of characters, and we see that towards the end of the story. And then now, there is this element of the romance that makes the audience wonder what part of it is fantasy and what part of it was reality. Think about when the characters were on the island after the shipwreck, and they came on the island, and everything looked so green and beautiful, and their clothes were just sparkling. What part of that was real? What part of that was, you know, because of magic? So what we are seeing here is that to begin an analysis of the Tempest, we can see that it falls under comedy, it falls under romance, and there are also elements of the tragedy. So what kind of play is it? I would say, to be on the safe side, if you were asked to write about the type of play it is, especially in relation to the progression of the events, it is safe to say it portrays elements of all three types of drama. And you can defend your points with examples. So having said that now, we know exactly what it is that we are to look out for in The Tempest. So let us look at the plot structure. Before we begin, based on your knowledge of how the plot of a story develops, what do you observe about the development of The Tempest in terms of how Shakespeare orders the events? Have you ever paid attention to that? Really? Have you read the play? Okay, let's start there. All right, well, if you haven't, and if you have already, there's no harm in reviewing, all right, because we have to sometimes go back in order to go forward. So we're going to be looking at how he structures the plot, and hopefully this information combined with the type of drama it is will give you more insight when you go about your own analysis of other dimensions of the play. So we could look at the development of the plot using the 5-point plot system, because each of the acts of the play actually acts as a development in the plot. So when we talk about the exposition, for example, and this is a word you would have heard from grade 7 coming up. When we talk about the exposition, what is it that we are talking about? Let us put a few points here. At the baseline, what does the exposition of a particular work of art entail? Very good. The exposition entails the setting, and we also get an idea of the characters. Very good. Let's talk setting. Where is the story set? Describe the setting for me, please. Give me some words, expressions that we can use to describe the setting. At sea, let's start there. That's where the actions begin. From the sea, where do the actions move to? An island, very good. So that's the place. Can we describe this place? What is the island like? It's enchanted. Excellent. I love that word, isolated. All right, so that captures the general setting of the play. By the time you get to the end of Act 1, you would have also been introduced to the characters. Who are some of the characters who play the most central roles in the story? Yes, we meet Antonio, who is the brother of Prospero, excellent. We meet Sebastian, who is the brother of Alonso. We also meet Prospero. We meet Miranda. And we meet Ferdinand. Among other characters in the story. All right, so by the time we get to the end of Act 1, the setting and the characters are almost fully developed. All right, so just to recap, so there's a violent storm at sea. That much is evident in terms of the setting. Major and minor characters are introduced, some of which we didn't list here because I just focused on the major ones on the board just now. The storm subsides and the passengers and crew are scattered on an island. And all of this is a part of Prospero's strategic plan. Prospero explains his role to Miranda. He explains why he created the storm. At least he gives her a snippet preview of why he created the storm and hints at what it is that he hopes to get out of it. And then now we see Miranda falling head over heels in love with Ferdinand, whom she's meeting for the very first time. You know, I am amused by the way Miranda looks at Ferdinand. Yes, we understand that she has never seen another human being before but her father. But the way she looks at Ferdinand and the way she describes him, I see Ferdinand as this well-sculpted body, blonde hair, blue eyes just piercing into the depths of your soul, chiseled skin, and, you know, the muscles are just bulging and protruding. Okay, maybe I'm describing Chris Hemsworth here. But you get where I'm going with this, right? But we see Miranda head over heels in love with Ferdinand. So by the time we're finished with the exposition, we are well on our way to understanding the setting of the story, and we also have an idea of who the characters are. Where do we go from the rising action? From the exposition, sorry, which is captured in Act 1. Where do we go from here? Well, I kind of gave away the answer a while ago. Yes, we go to the rising action, and normally Act 2 functions as the rising action in the story. So, just for you to think a little bit, what do you consider to be the central conflict or complication in the Tempest? Yes, the fact that Prospero has been usurped and he wants his dukedom back. And that is why everything is going haywire here. All of the storm, all the confusion, everything is as a result of Prospero wanting his position back. So we see Act 2 as a rising action. And what is the function of the rising action again? Excellent. It introduces the conflict in the story. All right. So the conflict or complications intensify, and sometimes, because, you know, that's what Shakespeare does, especially if it's a comedy, you might have sub-conflicts coming out of the main conflict as well. Okay. So in the rising action now, we see where Prospero further puts his plan into action. So he gets Miranda and Ferdinand together. He gets all the people on the island, and notice he separates them on the island. You know, the whole idea of dividing to conquer, that's basically the strategy that Prospero uses here. We realize that there's much confusion as the men on the island wake up and they are disoriented. What just happened here? How did we get here, etc., and so on. They look at the atmosphere, they realize that, no, there is something off about this place. So they wake up with much disorientation. And subplots are introduced. And by subplots, I mean, for example, the case where we have Caliban plotting to kill Prospero. That's a subplot right there. And then we have Antonio plotting to kill Alonso. All right, trying to get Sebastian on his side so that they can both kill Alonso. So we have like 3 plots happening at the same time. The 2 subplots revolving around the main plot, which is Prospero trying to get his dukedom back. Are you following so far? So this is all to help you to understand how to chart your way through the drama piece. It is not as difficult as you think. Shakespearean drama is to be enjoyed. And if you know how to navigate your way through it, then you are one step closer to enjoying the drama piece more. What comes after the falling action? What comes after the rising action? So we had the exposition, we have the rising action. Where do we go next in terms of the plot structure? Yes, the climax. And as the word suggests, the climax is normally the highest point of interest in the play or in any particular work that you're doing. What is the function of the feast and the harpy? Because the feast and the harpy play a critical role in the climax or turning point of the story. You don't recall the feast or the harpy? All right, let me refresh your memory. It tells me that you're not reading much, or if you're not paying close attention to what you're reading. Come on, students. You have to read with an open mind and pay attention to what you're reading. All right, do you recall the scene where Gonzalo, Antonio, Alonso, and Sebastian were together in a part of the island? Okay, and then Ariel took on the form of the harpy. The harpy looked like a female slash bird slash another type of creature. Yes, and while he was there, he did something. Do you remember what he did in the form of the harpy? Well, a feast, a magical feast suddenly appeared. And this is to tell me that these people are really under the influence of magic, because you are on an island, it is deserted, you didn't see any chefs or cooks around, and you see this magical table appear in front of you with foods of all sorts and flavor, and you just go down there and you're ready to eat. But more importantly was the role of the harpy, because what the harpy did was to show them their deeds. So the harpy became almost like a mirror for their souls, to show them how they had wronged Prospero and to also tell them of the impending punishment that was coming to their way. So by the end of that scene, after the table disappeared, because while they were ready to eat from it, the table just disappeared and the harpy left. After that, they came to the realization that, you know, we really wronged Prospero, and so on and so forth. So we get the turning point of the story right here. All right, so the harpy presents itself, and the conflict reaches a point of intensity. All the conflicts and character motives reach a peak. Remember, we also have sub-conflicts in this story as well. So by the time we get to Act 3, Prospero's plan is fully in motion, almost at the peak of what he really intended to execute. Stefano, Trincolo, and Caliban are well on their way to kill Prospero. And Alonso, by influencing Sebastian, has set the plan in motion to kill, Antonio, influencing Sebastian, has set the plan in motion to kill Alonso. So we realize that all the conflicts, the main conflict and the sub-conflicts, are coming to a peak. So as I had said before, through the character of the harpy, the conspirators' deeds are brought to the fore. They begin to look into themselves to see how they had wronged Prospero, and probably realizing that indeed, maybe they're deserving of whatever punishment is coming their way. So Prospero now is closer to executing his plan. And what is his plan? Let us look at Prospero's plan for a minute. Thank you. In terms of Prospero's plan, right? We see Prospero getting Miranda and Ferdinand together. He gets Miranda and Ferdinand together, wanting them to be married so that he can claim back his position in terms of being Duke of Milan. How is he going to accomplish that? Well, if Ferdinand and Miranda gets married, remember who Ferdinand is. Ferdinand is Alonso's son. It therefore means that Alonso and Prospero would become what? In-laws. And not only would they become in-laws and form a nice little family bond, you know, based on how Prospero has planned it, but Prospero would be one step closer to becoming royalty again and then probably getting his dukedom back. You remember when we spoke about Prospero not being exactly good or exactly bad? Well, this is one of the instances because we see Prospero using his own daughter to get his plan underway. That calls for some analysis right there. But in another lesson, when we're looking at characterization, we'll focus more on Prospero. So we have reached the climax. Where do we go from here? The falling action. Very good. The falling action is that part of the story that allows you to see what's going to unravel, even though it hasn't unraveled as yet. So we get an idea. It's like watching an Element movie, and you know, you see the killer comes into the house, and you're wondering what's going to happen next, and then you realize that a lady comes home, and you see, okay, she's going to go upstairs, and you see her grabbing a weapon. You say, all right, she's going to attack him and knock him out cold. Right, so this is the part of the story. Question for you. What is the reason for forcing the marriage between Miranda and Ferdinand? Well, I kind of hinted at that a while ago. Why does Prospero want this marriage so much? Even though he's pretending as if he doesn't want it, he does want the marriage. Why does he want the marriage? Right, it is a part of his game plan to find his way back into Milan so that he can get his dukedom back. All right? By joining the two families, he can get that plan executed. So the falling action. So Act 4 now would act as the falling action. And this is where Prospero reveals his plans and his motives to his rivals. So you would recall the scene where Prospero lined up everybody and he went to them one by one and he told them their deeds and he said, you were wrong, you shouldn't have done this to me, and this is why you're here, this is why you suffered in the storm, and so on. Right, so Prospero reveals his plan and his motives to his rival. So you see, we realize how this is going to fare out, because if Prospero has revealed himself, if he has come out now to say that I am the one who created the storm and so on, then we kind of see how the story is going to fare out. Prospero acknowledges the marriage of his daughter to Ferdinand. All right, so he makes clear that he is the one who set this up, that Miranda is getting married to Ferdinand, and he and Alonso are going to be one happy family, and that is one way that he can use to get his dukedom back. The full explanation of Prospero's motives is revealed, as I said before, and Caliban's plans are foiled. Now we have to go back to those subplots because we cannot, I don't think Shakespeare could have ended the story not bringing all of those plots to a close. And this is a point to note as well when you're writing your own stories. It is very, you are to be very careful when you're writing your stories, because if you have too many plot lines being developed in one story, you can run yourself into problems. This is an entire play, so Shakespeare had enough time to put in subplots and sub-conflicts and to resolve them. In a short story, you will not have so much time, so you have to be very careful in how you structure the conflict. In fact, I would suggest that in your short stories, you limit your conflicts to just one central conflict and allow the story to revolve around that. But we see that the sub-conflicts are put to rest because Caliban's plan is foiled. You remember how Prospero allowed the illusion of the dogs to be barking and biting them and so on. And he brought Caliban, Stefano, and Trincolor into his presence. Of course, Caliban thought he was going to be chastised and heavily whipped because he went against Prospero. But Prospero is in a forgiving mood. So he didn't exercise any too stringent measures against Caliban. We see also that Ariel intercepted the plan to kill Alonso, because what he did was to wake up Alonso just in time so that Antonio and Sebastian would not kill him. So we see that two conflicts have been put to rest already. And we are on our way to seeing how the final conflict is going to be put to rest as well. So where does this take us now? To the end part of the story, and that part is called the resolution. Is the story resolved? Because guess what? Writers do not always resolve their stories though, you know. Right? There are some stories that are left hanging. You're left in suspense. So you have to know, you know, imagine an ending to the story. But this one comes to an end. What are your reactions to the ending of the play? Remember, the play ends where everybody is in, you know, good stead with each other. We realize that Prospero has forgiven them. Miranda and Ferdinand are going to get married. Caliban is forgiven. Ariel is freed. What are your reactions to that ending? Do you think it's a good ending to the story? Yes, and remember where we started, so you have to go back now to look at what type of play this is. So we said that if it's a comedy, towards the end there is much reconciliation. The same thing is in the romance. So there is much reconciliation, people come back together, one big happy family, there is a marriage. So yes, it seems as if the play ended on a very good note, especially in light of the type of drama that it is. So Act 5 now acts as the resolution. Act 1, exposition. Act 2, rising action. Act 3, climax. Act 4, falling action. And by the time we get to Act 5, we are now on the verge of seeing how things are going to be resolved. Very good. So Prospero forgives his rivals and he gets what he has always wanted, his dukedom back. And he's so happy that he has gotten his dukedom back. All right. And Ariel also gets his freedom. Because remember, you know, Ariel was always saying to Prospero, I've been doing all of these tasks for you. You promised to set me free and you're not setting me free. And what did Prospero always do when Ariel brought that to him? He said to him, listen to me, you ungrateful spirit. Remember how you got to be my slave in the first place. You were trapped in a tree for 12 long years. I came to this island, freed you, and every single day you're coming to me asking me to set you free. You know, and he kept Ariel under his reins until his mission was accomplished. I know that this is not a lesson on characterization, but we cannot overlook the fact that Prospero is not completely good, neither is he completely bad. How justified is he to have held Ariel captive, even though he was the one who freed him? So does it mean that because you do a good deed for somebody, you have the justification to keep them captive? That's something for us to consider. All are forgiven. So Prospero is on his nice way now, sailing in the wind. He's going back to his homeland. The storm has passed. He has his dukedom back. Miranda and Ferdinand are getting married. He has exacted his revenge and everything seems to be working in his favor. All right. So let us go over again. We said that in terms of the plot development, we can use a five-point plot system to track the development of the story. In Act 1, we see the exposition. And the exposition gives us an idea of the characters and the setting. So by the time you're finished reading Act 1 of The Tempest, you would have had an idea of where the story is taking place, the kind of atmosphere within which the characters are operating, and you also have an idea of who the main characters are going to be. By the time we get to Act 2, we see where there is the development of a potential conflict. All right, and the central conflict, we said, is Prospero being at odds with his brother Antonio because Antonio usurped him and he wants what Antonio took from him. So we see that main conflict being developed. We also see sub-conflicts being developed. By the time we get to Act 2, which is the rising action, we get a hint that Antonio is going to plot with Sebastian to murder Alonso. And we also get the idea where Caliban is planning to kill Prospero. What a heap of people trying to get at each other here. Oh, wow. When we talk about the confusion in this type of drama. By the time we get to Act 3, we are at the climax of the drama. And at this point now, we see a turning point. So in this particular play, we see where Prospero begins to show himself. We see where Prospero begins to allow the people to know that he was the one behind everything and that they are here because they had wronged him and he's going to exact revenge on them. When we get to Act 4, we see how things are going to fare out. We see how things are going to be resolved, even though we haven't reached a resolution as yet, but we get an idea of what's going to happen. So Prospero brings everybody into his circle and he tells them that you are here because you had done me wrong and you have to pay the price. And by the time we get to Act 5 now, that brings everything home. And if this play falls in the ambit of the romance, the tragedy, or the comedy, then we should have a happy ending. Do we have a happy ending? Oh yes, we have a happy ending. We see Miranda and Ferdinand playing chess. We see Prospero being reunited. Ferdinand being reunited with his father, because remember his father thought he was dead. Right? And we see happiness all around. People are happy, the storm is gone, and Prospero has promised them nice and safe passage back to Milan or to Naples, wherever they are coming from, or wherever they are going. So, you know, I couldn't end without giving you a practice question. So my question is that I want you to attempt. Consider the final scene of the play. You know, the part where Miranda and Ferdinand are playing chess and everybody is happy and, you know, everybody is going home, sailing, smooth sailing on nice seas. How appropriate is an ending like this for the overall plot structure of the play? Let us look at it again. Consider the final scene of the play. How appropriate is this as an ending for the overall plot structure? All right, just to give you a head start, we are going to be looking at some points you can consider. We are going to look at some points you could consider if you're answering this question. All right, so how appropriate is the ending? So the first thing you would have to do is establish what kind of play it is. What kind of play is this? The next thing is to look at how did the play end? Communicate how the play ends. And then, of course, you could go on to discuss now whether or not this ending is appropriate for the drama. Or how appropriate is it? Is it very appropriate? To what extent is it appropriate? All right, and if you follow those guidelines, then you should be able to write a very good discussion on whether the ending is appropriate for the plot structure. So this is how we tie everything together. All right, just to recap very quickly. Today, we assessed the type of play The Tempest is in relation to the plot. We discussed the structure and the development of the plot. And I hope you have a better attitude now towards the approach of Shakespeare drama. Hopefully you have a better appreciation of Shakespearean drama. It's nothing to kill you. Learn from it, love it.